Sticking with this trucker freedom convoy story, one of the things we've been hearing a lot is that there's a lot of hope being built throughout Canada, looking at what's happening, seeing the amount of people. I think a lot of people are sort of becoming shocked at the amount of people who actually support the end of these vaccine mandates. And we kind of want to talk about this and a number of other things related to this story. I got Pulse journalist Arjun Walia here with me. Arjun, when it comes to the hope piece, what do you got to say?
Well, it's clear this movement is huge. We're talking about, you don't know exactly how many, but several thousands of trucks, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. It's a lot of people and a lot of Canadians and a lot of people around the world who are hopeful that this protest is going to end vaccine mandates.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of hope being built up. And on the other side, you have mainstream media and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying it represents a small fringe minority, which isn't really true. They've raised over $7 million, way more than the Liberal government was able to raise in 3 months in 2021.
Yeah.
So it's providing a lot of people hope that mandates and all this is going to end, and it includes the vaccinated and unvaccinated.
Yeah.
So the question is it going to happen?
Right.
I mean, there's hope that it's going to happen, but what if it doesn't? Are people going to be disappointed? Are they going to, what if they just end the mandates for the truckers only? And is the government going to think that's going to ease things down? Because these truckers are there for not just truck mandates, they're there for all mandates.
They're there for all mandates, yeah. So the question is if the mandates do get ended, for the truckers, will some leave? Because that was the initial thing was, hey, we want to be able to come in and out of the U.S. border. But, now that this has extended to potentially all COVID measures entirely, what will happen? And so here's the thing is off the top, they're going to stay there. The promise is that these truckers, as well as I'm going to guess, nobody knows right now, just to be clear, but I'm going to guess there's going to be over 10,000 people that are probably going to be there. Those numbers could come up and down.
I'd say minimum 10,000 based on what we've already seen. Yeah,
I would agree with that. And
I think what's happening is historical. It's one of the biggest protests in history.
It's huge.
Yeah, and it's not being televised properly.
And it's not being televised. Yeah. So my question is to you, and I'll give my answer after, but do you think this ends all COVID vaccine mandates in Canada?
I have hope, but we've been in this, I guess, industry for a long time. And when you see something like 9/11 happen, things remain permanently after that.
Yeah.
And I think whoever's pushing this, there's clearly a combined effort of people above the politicians, I don't know, World Economic Forum, these kind of powerful people who are really pushing hard and who have really said, we want this to be the new normal, transhumanism, online stuff. The world is changing forever and it's never going back to normal.
Right.
But you see all these people stepping up, right? So it does provide that hope, but at the same time, you have these people who have been really pushing and pushing and pushing to the point where I feel like they would never give up their agenda. But you look at what happens in the UK with Boris Johnson, all the mandates there were dropped.
And some people said that could have been political, right?
Yeah.
Because, there was an election coming up and there was a whole bunch of pressure. Plus, actually, scratch the election. It might not have been the election. I might be confusing it with another place. But what I can say for sure is that he was receiving a lot of flack for various events that they were attending where they weren't following COVID measures.
But he also did say that we can lift mandates now because of vaccines and social distancing and lockdown. So they're conditioning people to say, you follow us, we give you your freedom. So
sure.
Who knows what the truth is? But
and that's a possibility.
But here in Canada, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have hope, yes, but I'm not this is going to work for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe we might see lifting of vaccine mandates for truckers because they flip-flopped on that before. But how do you feel?
I feel the swell. I feel the inspiration of this. I do. You've heard me say it. I think this is it. I think, to be quite honest, the Trudeau government is fucked. This is it. They can't come out of this one. And the reason why I say that is because the swell around this, if it is as big as the social media posts, as our on the ground coverage appears to be, and the people who we've been talking to, if it is this big, and because it is a stay, I want to explain this point, because people are going to go there and they're going to remain. This is very different than a simple rally or a simple march, which kind of comes and then goes, and then it's people forget about it in a couple days. Yeah. This is something where they're alleging, and again, we're likely going to attend this, so we're alleging in this as well in Ottawa, that we're going to remain there. People are going to remain there until these mandates are dropped all across the board. Because the way I look at it is this: if the trucker mandates are lifted, and as you pointed out, they've been flip-flopping on that.
Right.
You know, those truckers are still, well, maybe I can do my job going in and out of the United States, but I still can't get on a plane in Canada. I can't get on a train in Canada. I can't get on a boat. So their lives are still dramatically hindered, right? And I do see a unification happening here. And I think the Trudeau government is in a straight up panic right now.
Right.
I think they're freaking out. I think they're trying to figure this out. Obviously, Trudeau went into hiding, AKA he's isolating. I'm not thinking he's hiding because people are coming to get him. I think he's isolating because they're trying to figure this out. They're trying to figure out what to do. So I'm extremely hopeful about this. How long will this take? I don't know. But I do think, especially since other countries around the world have sort of indicated that mandates are dropping, they're not doing certain things anymore, it's only a matter of time that they're going to be forced to. So, yeah, I'm hopeful.
And you look at other countries, not just the UK, like Scotland and Czech Republic dropped mandates. I think Denmark recently did. There is a huge protest in Belgium going on right now. Like, these protests have been the largest in history throughout COVID.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's so many people who oppose these measures. So, I mean, eventually I think we have to stop asking governments and just start doing, but that's tough because, like, people are going to be scared of fines and this and that. But, like, yeah, I hope what's going on in Canada right now, and this would be huge. If this was successful in dropping mandates, it would go to show that people actually have the power. And when we come together, both vaccinated and unvaccinated, whatever, when we unite as one for a cause, like it could happen. It would be huge. I
think it's worthwhile to talk about a couple other things sort of related to this. One is obviously the discussions of the white nationalism and some of the people being involved are bad people and this sort of stuff, which we'll get to.
Calling them extremist.
But what I do want to start with just before we get to that is, kind of the point you were making about how big this would be. Like I believe, and this is my feeling, and I'm going to hopefully see what we can do to encourage this idea or hear from other people on this, but I don't think this movement should stop with the mandates. I think this should continue to get Trudeau to resign. Now, why do I think that? I'm not saying that because I think he's a weasel and he needs to resign. No, I think he needs to be used as an example to indicate what you just pointed out, that the people have power. Right. Because a lot of these Western politicians have come to a point where they feel untouchable. The media protects them, their fellow politicians protect them, powerful people protect them, and they're not serving the people.
But can you really replace Trudeau? Like, it's just going to be another puppet in there.
And that's the question, though. So my thing is, I don't know what happens if you get him to resign. I don't know what the actual process of who ends up there, right? So that's part one. Part two, you're right, it just becomes another puppet per se. But what I think it will show as the beginning process of kind of pulling down some of the trust in our institutions, which has been happening as a result of the institutions. And I'm not suggesting I think the world should go into chaos where nobody has trust in the institutions. I'm saying we need to slowly transition this. We need to discuss this. Right. And I think that if politicians can see that the people have the power to say, no, we're done with you, then they'll have to think twice, 3 times, 4 times about the types of decisions.
What about all the resources like mainstream media? And like, if you talk to someone who's not really aware of how large these protests are, their perception is strictly from mainstream media. They don't really see it as a big deal or anything that can spark any change or something that's historical like we see it. So it's like you have that mass of people who have that perception that this isn't really a big deal, and these politicians use these people. They use their will to, justify these mandates and stuff like that, and they call these protests the people who are in the minority, even though you have a lot of evidence that they're maybe in the majority. But the fact that they can make it seem like an optical illusion, like this is just a 10% fringe extremist group minority, it plays to their advantage and goes against these protesters, and it might help them just say, screw it, we're not going to lift these mandates. These people can stay here as long as we want.
Yeah, so a note on that is I think, once they get to Ottawa, once this convoy makes its way there and you're seeing massive amounts of people, I don't think they'll be able to hide anymore how big this is. But, again, going back to this whole, we've seen what the mainstream media is focused on in a lot of ways, this white nationalist, this far right, this extremism, focusing on hate groups. What do you feel when you see that? Because there is some truth to it.
It's for the most part, it's crap. It's crap. These are nice people.
Yeah.
It's always been a tactic. I worry about the government. Like they're probably, like you said, Trudeau's in high. I think they're trying to figure out how to handle this thing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the tactics they could use and has been used in the past is get some fake protesters in there that start creating violence.
Yeah.
And then therefore they look like extremists. It's all of them these extremists, and then they have an excuse to bring in police and maybe military and shut it down.
Yeah.
I think all that's fake. I think that's these are tactics that have been used by governments.
So
Obviously, I think there are some people that are going to have to control their emotions, but for the most part, I think this is going to be a peaceful protest.
Yeah.
And if there is violence, I would probably think it's government-induced violence to make it look like extremists, because that's Trudeau called the unvaccinated racist and misogynist. It's their tactic. They've always labeled these people, right?
Well, and that's the thing is, here's Trudeau saying that the views of these people, this convoy, is unacceptable. And what I proposed, I just wrote a piece. If anybody wants to check it out, it's called "After Mandates Are Dropped, Canadians Need to Force Trudeau to Resign." And in that, I'm just discussing how, and from my perspective, Trudeau has taken a number of steps and taken a number of actions, said a number of things that are borderline unacceptable, right? Like if you want to run a country that's peaceful, that is operating in a way where there's respect and there's love for one another and a sense of unity, you shouldn't be saying the things that he's saying and at how often he says it.
And people who agree with mandates and stuff and agree with everything that's going on should be able to look at that and say,
okay, there's a problem there. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I think he's projecting in a lot of ways. And again, I feel for the fact that he's being seen as, kind of this global, at the moment, kind of a bit of a coward, because, and again, I'm not saying this to try and put him down, but more so the idea of like, look, Canada, this convoy is making international news. It's everywhere. And, him having to go into isolation is really not making him look good. Now, whether the isolation is a complete ploy or whatever, I mean, I don't think it's real, but whatever it is, it's a political move. They're obviously panicking, right? Yeah. But I don't think it excuses all the things he has said up to this point. I think he made this bed, and now he's got to sleep in it, and that's why I think he needs to be used as an example, and we need to see him resign.
Now, what happens if, like so many people who weren't in this field, this has kind of been an awakening kind of moment for them. Yeah. And they have a lot of hope based on the stuff like I've been through the last 13 plus years. I've always had hope, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that can make you feel hopeless. Now, what would happen if this was unsuccessful? Yeah. So what would that do? Some people are calling this a controlled opposition, which I disagree with. Yeah. To break people's spirits, give them false hope, and as well as blame the truckers for more supply chain issues. Sure. This is the reason supply chain issues. Meanwhile, a small group of unvaccinated truckers being fired would create an enormous amount of issues. But basically, I think part of the tactic the government is also going to use is blame them for more problems. Yeah. This is creating more problems, blah, blah, blah. But I do believe the government's always going to divert. They're always going to divert their own failures onto somebody else. And how this convoy could become next. What are you going to, if this isn't successful, like you're hopeful, you're almost certain that this is going to go through. I am. At the moment. Slightly, based on, I'm probably 50-50, but I'm not getting my hopes up too much. Yeah. And to be clear, I'm not saying that, just because the mandates are removed or whatever, that we're out of the weeds. I'm saying that I think this is going to put too much pressure on the government, and in combination with all the other countries that are doing what they're doing, I think it's going to become very hard for them to keep doing what is honestly an unscientific and ridiculous policy. So I think it's like one of those things where they're going to have no choice. Now, how are you going to feel if it doesn't work? Are you going to feel broken? I won't feel broken because, we've been through so many of these over the course of the last 13 years. But what about people who haven't been? It could feel sad, of course, and I think that's on the table. I think what my honest feeling, and I've been talking about this for a very long time, and I'm sure you have as well, is a lot of the times these movements and the alternative community and alternative media, a lot of the times actually shoots itself in the foot a lot more than it would probably like to admit. And what I mean by that is, like, if this can remain very clear, very wise, very strategic, very respectful, very loving, and very focused, I think this will work, right? Mm-hmm. There is going to be an element of a
quote unquote war here. What I mean by that is it's an information war. The mainstream media is going to throw everything at making these people look horrible, horrible, horrible. It's going to be fake news everywhere from them. And on the alternative side, it needs to be kept clean. Stop with all the Holocaust comparisons. Stop with all the,
it makes it easy for them to call you an extremist.
Exactly.
Don't be
I'm not saying, these people shouldn't have freedom of speech. I'm saying be wise for a moment.
Because I can see how people are making that comparison.
Yeah. So can I.
I can see it, but it's best just to not use that.
In nuance, what they're saying is the very early days of that, when people started to be manipulated in Germany to accepting bad ideas, that's the comparison they're making. But it's being thrown into comparing the worst of the worst with this, which is not a fair comparison. But it's like, I think at the end of the day, again, it's got to be wisdom and strategy and really doing this properly.
Based on like the whole control opposition thing, I want to do another episode on that, talking with you just strictly about controlled opposition. Yeah, because I get a lot of messages about that. But
and it's a fair question.
I don't see it's fair, but like for example, I don't see how so many people protesting vaccine mandates, a movement created to show that so many people oppose what government is doing, plays in favor of what the government is trying to do. It makes it harder for them.
It's an absolute logical fallacy, right? Because you're
like
even if it's sort of like the white nationalist thing, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's 2 or 3 people involved that are hate group white nationalists. Okay, well, even if you could prove that, which is a little bit of a stretch, how does that suddenly represent tens of hundreds of millions of people in Canada that are taking part in this and supporting this? It doesn't represent them, right? Yeah. So those people are actually saying, well, at the end of the day, what's the result? If the vaccine mandates get ended, and I can tell you right now, we've been out to some of these local protests. Nobody there is like, white nationalism. Nobody there is saying any of that, right? Mm-hmm. So for all people that are participating in this, this is about ending vaccine mandates, nothing else, right? Yeah. So if it is a PSYOP, it is completely backfiring. Yeah, and if it is a white nationalist thing, nobody knows that it is except for what the mainstream media is saying to people.
And I don't think I can see how governments take these movements and use them to manipulate perception, but I don't think they were started by government.
Oh, yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense to me anyways. Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. That's all. We're going to continue covering, this whole Freedom Convoy as we continue to go. We'll have articles on the Pulse. Our social media will continue to do stories. And, of course, we'll continue with videos like this. We have some journalists on the ground starting today in Ottawa, so it should be pretty good. And that's it. That's all, really. It's an exciting time, I think, here.